Imagine living your entire childhood in a world without sound, without colors, without words. Imagine having feelings, thoughts, and dreams inside your mind, but having no way to share them with anyone. And then, one ordinary day, one simple word changed everything. Not a long sentence, not a complicated idea, just one word. A word that opens the door to a completely new world. That word was water. Welcome back to English Everyday, where we discover powerful stories from history while improving our English through meaningful storytelling. Today, we continue the incredible journey of Helen Keller. This is part 4 of Helen Keller's life story. In the previous episodes, we'll learn about Helen's early childhood, the illness that changed her life forever, and the difficult years she spent trapped in a world of silence and darkness. We saw how Helen struggled because she could not see, she could not hear, and she could not communicate her thoughts and emotions. Then, everything began to change when Anne Sullivan entered her life. Anne was not just a teacher, she became Helen's guide, her friend, and the person who helped her discover the power of language. But before Helen could truly understand the world around her, there was one important thing she needed to discover. She needed to understand that everything had a name, and that discovery would happen beside a simple water pump. Before Anne Sullivan arrived, Helen Keller was a child full of energy and intelligence, but her world was confusing. She could feel things, she could touch objects, she could experience the warmth of the sun and the softness of flowers, but she did not understand what these things meant. There was no connection between her experiences and language. For most children, learning language happens naturally. A baby hears a mother say milk while drinking milk. A child hears the word dog while seeing a dog. Slowly, the child learns that sounds represent things. But Helen did not have sound. She did not have sight. She had no way to make the connections. She lived in a world where everything existed, but almost nothing had a name. Because Helen could not communicate, she often became frustrated. She had thoughts inside her mind, but she could not express them. She wanted people to understand her, but they could not. Sometimes she became angry, sometimes she cried, sometimes she reacted with strong emotions because she felt trapped, but deep inside Helen was a curious mind. She wanted to learn. She wanted to understand. She wanted to connect with the world. She just needed someone who could show her the right way. That person was Anne Sullivan. Anne Sullivan was a young teacher who came to teach Helen when Helen was still a child. Anne herself had experienced difficulties in life. She had problems with her own eyesight when she was young, and she understood what it meant to struggle. Because of her own experiences, Anne had patience and determination. She believed Helen was intelligent. She believed Helen was capable. She believed there was a world waiting for Helen to discover. Anne began teaching Helen through a method called finger spelling. She would take Helen's hand and write letters in her palm. For example, when she gave Helen a doll, she would spell DOLL. When she showed Helen other objects, she would spell their names. But at first, Helen did not understand. She could copy the movements, she could repeat the signs, but she did not know that those movements represent real things. The signs were just movements. They had no meaning. Anne Sullivan continued teaching with incredible patience. She knew that Helen was close to an important discovery. She knew Helen needed one moment that would connect everything together, and that moment finally arrived. It was April 5, 1887, a day that would become one of the most famous moments in the history of education. Anne took Helen outside to the water pump. The warm Alabama sun was shining. Helen stood near the pump while Anne guided her hands. Then Anne placed one of Helen's hands under the flowing water. Cold water rushed over Helen's fingers. At that exact moment, Anne took Helen's other hand and slowly spilled W-A-T-E-R. Something was different this time. Helen felt the water. She felt the letters, and suddenly the connection appeared. In that moment, Helen understood that the thing flowing over her hand had a name. It was not just a feeling, it was not just something cold and moving, it was water. For the first time, Helen understood that the movements Anne made had meaning. Words were not just random signs, words represented the world. Everything around her had a name. The ground had a name. The trees had names. The people around her had names. The entire world suddenly became understandable. Later, Helen described this moment as a powerful awakening. It was as if her mind had been sleeping and suddenly it came alive. The darkness around her did not disappear, the silence around her did not disappear, but something inside her changed forever. She now had a key. The key was language. Think about this moment. A person who had lived for years without understanding words suddenly discovers that every object has a story. Every person has an identity. Every experience has meaning. This was not just learning a new word, this was discovering an entire world. After that day, Helen wanted to learn everything. She touched objects and asked Anne for their names. She wanted to know the name of everything around her. Her curiosity grew stronger every day. The child who once lived in frustration began to explore the world with excitement. Anne Sullivan had not only taught Helen words, she had given her a way to think. She had given her a way to communicate. She had given her hope. The relationship between Helen and Anne became one of the most inspiring teacher-student relationships in history. Anne did not give Helen an easy life. She gave her something much more valuable. She gave her the ability to create her own future. The story of the word water teaches us an important lesson. Sometimes the biggest changes in life begin with small moments. A single word, a single idea, a single person who believes in us. For Helen Keller, that moment beside the water pump changed everything. It was the beginning of her journey as a writer, a speaker, and an inspiration to millions of people around the world. The world did not change that day. The water pump did not change. The silence did not disappear, but Helen Keller changed, because she finally understood something powerful. The world had meaning, and she had a voice. This was the moment when a simple word opened Helen Keller's world. The word was water, and from that moment forward, Helen's journey was no longer about darkness and silence, it was about learning, courage, and discovering what was possible. In the next episode, we will continue Helen Keller's journey and explore how she began learning more words, reading, writing, and entering the world of education. Thank you for listening to English Every Day. Keep learning, keep growing, and remember, sometimes one simple discovery can open an entire world. See you in the next episode. Goodbye for now.